Greetings, NPA Nation. Dr. Abernathy here. I am going to as briefly as I can, go over my teaching and grading philosophy with you. And it kind of explains the undergirding assumptions and values and aims and objectives that I base all of my teaching upon. So I think understanding the way I operate, the way I do things, and how I grade you, what I expect from you, and what the overall objectives are is important if you want to have the best chances of succeeding in my courses. And if I am somehow doing something contrary to my objectives for your good, the things that I'm hoping I can do for you to advance your career, then you have to know those objectives in order to get me back on the right path. So let's go ahead and get started. So, aims of this presentation, like I said, I want to give you my philosophy that guides how I design my courses and how I implement them, the strategies and procedures that I use, and the overall objectives. And the goal, like I said, I want to increase your odds of success in my class and in turn, increase your odds of success in the program and in your career. So, a couple things about me. Everything that I do has a purpose, and I don't do anything that does not have an aim, a goal, an end, and the juice always has to be worth the squeeze. Couple things about my background is some of you know me, but I dedicated my life to the overturning the reform of one particular law. I ended up doing a PhD solely to learn everything I could about one particular law that allowed for persons with disabilities to have their feeding tube removed, causing starvation, dehydration against their wishes. And I dedicated my entire life to this purpose. And I found I love teaching, and that's why I'm here today. My new purpose is to equip you guys for the best possible career. But I am so purpose-driven that I get incredibly annoyed when something is not achieving its intended purpose. One thing about me that you'll learn is there's absolutely nothing that I hate more than arbitrary. I hate arbitrary, something that doesn't have a reason, doesn't have a compelling reason. I loathe that. There's so much in life that is necessary, that's important, that's valuable. And time, resources, money, energy, everything, that is finite. We only have so much of it. We only have so many days. We only have, so much patience. And things that we spend on junk that doesn't matter is resources we're not spending on things that do matter. I absolutely hate arbitrary, especially because I do hard things. The things that I'm called to do in life are difficult. I think that they take a lot more from me than, average people, because I tend to try to achieve the impossible. And therefore, I think that's why arbitrary bothers me a little bit more. But knowing that I hate arbitrary means that I will never require anything of you without seriously considering, hey, is this important? I mean, do we really have to do this? What is my reason for doing this? And is that reason good enough to justify asking you to do this? You guys are educated, you have a degree already. A lot of you are thriving in your careers. You're just here to expand a little bit and get that piece of paper that'll open doors and get a step up. A lot of you have families, and you're adults. You've got so many more important things to do than pointless, busy work. And I would never do that to you. So I try to think of, does this have to happen? And what is the most efficient, easiest way to go about doing it? So if I'm asking you to do something, you can pretty much know that I've thought it through a million different ways to try to figure out if there is a easier way to do it. Nothing that I ever ask of you will be arbitrary. I hate arbitrary. I hate it. I hate it so much. You know, that's how serious I feel about it. I hate it. Like, the only way I can explain it is when you bite into a cookie and you think it's a chocolate chip, but it's a raisin. That's how much I hate it. So you won't be given anything arbitrary by me. It has to be necessary. If it's necessary, it may be, ironically, something I consider arbitrary. That, I mean, really seriously, why do I have to go and enter information into 3 different databases? We're like, but if it's required from the university in order for me to teach you, it's necessary. It's necessary for me to teach you, therefore it's worth doing, even if I don't necessarily think that it's worthwhile. My ultimate goal is that everything I ask you guys to do will be worthwhile, not just necessary, not just something you need to do in order to be competent, but worth doing. That we get the most out of every opportunity. Any chance we can double dip, any chance that we can start an assignment in one class and maybe finish it in another class, or we can't, of course, for plagiarism reasons, you cannot recycle projects, but you can repurpose and develop them. And that's kind of a good way to get ahead. So I'm always looking for opportunities to make assignments not just fulfill the purpose of assessing your competency and teaching you these concepts that you need in order to be a competent NPA, but hey, can we turn this into an interview that might be good networking for your potential job hunt after you graduate? So that's what I aim to do. If I am not giving you something that's particularly useful to you, maybe you don't understand why I think it's useful. Maybe I think it's useful and it's really not. I'm just misled that it's not relevant anymore. Kind of like teaching cursive in elementary school apparently isn't relevant anymore. Please let me know. And if you ever have any questions, why are we doing this? What's the importance of this? Why does this matter? I am happy to tell you. I will never, ever say, oh, well, you're doing it because, I did it, so you have to do it. That will not come out of my mouth. If you want to know why we're doing something, I think it's good for you to ask, because I think it makes it more relevant. So, preparation. My teaching philosophy is that the academic sphere is a lot like the marketplace. It's a lot like having a job. And points are analogous to money. In the world, you get paid with money, right? Here, you don't. You get paid with credit. You get paid with points. And because this is how you are compensated for your work, I am very conscientious to make sure that I don't steal from you. I have the ability to be generous with points in a way that does not hurt you, but not giving you what you earn really does hurt you. So I would much rather err on the side of mercy and grace, as long as I can do that without being unjust or setting you up to fail out there because you didn't earn the points, therefore you're not competent in these skills and knowledge and ability areas. So I am always going to try to compensate you fairly. And I'm always going to try to apply the same principles that apply when it comes to how you're compensated out there in the marketplace. You're compensated more for tasks that are more difficult, that involve more effort or more time, etc. So I try to make it as analogous as possible, and I try to reinforce that there's credit to be had only when that credit is earned. And it's important that you do earn it. I'm trying to also prepare you for professionalism and the greater obligations, ethical quandaries, etc., than just, hey, you know how to do a program evaluation, you know how to do statistics or whatever it is I teach you. I'm trying to prepare you for the expectations that come with being a leader in the public sector. And I do that as much as possible by trying to keep our activities and assignments in the classroom as close to realistic as possible. Because the letters MPA following a name, they mean things. Words mean things. If you have MPA following your name, it means that you have certain competencies to do a job. It imbues upon you certain privileges that you should be worthy of. And I need to make sure that you are worthy of those letters. Just like if you have the letters following your name, MD, that says something, right? Well, MPA also says something. So I'm looking at this as your on-the-job training, where I treat this as if it is a job, give you assignments that are as close to the ones that you will encounter in your career as possible. And I think that that helps make your learning a little bit more engaging and vibrant. So practice. So basically, I want you to look at this as your career simulator. It is a safe place to crash, dust yourself off, and carry on. There is a reason why when people are learning things, they don't just jump in, sink or swim. It doesn't work that way. When doctors are learning surgeries, they practice on cadavers. They don't practice on living people. When you were learning to drive, those of you that learn to drive, it's not like who taught you just put you straight out on the freeway and said good luck. Took you to maybe an empty parking lot, where if you hit something, it was going to be a curb and not like a car or a person. Simulators exist to give you practice in a damage controlled environment. So you learn what you need to do without the risks associated of not knowing what you need to do. You have to do it to know, but the stakes are a little too high. With public leadership, the stakes are a little too high to just throw you out there and hope that you have it. So this is your career simulator in that I am trying to make it a safe place to crash, dust yourself off, carry on, in that if you make mistakes here, which I anticipate that you will see how those mistakes would have played out in your career in order to know when you get there not to do those things or how to do things better. Because I'd much rather you struggle with something here where it's safe than struggle with something out there where you can potentially lose your job. So I've done everything I can to try to foster an environment where that I have baked right in every chance I can to take away the anxiety associated with your grades, where you make mistakes and you struggle, but you know that it's not going to end up failing you in the end, that you still have a chance to make up those grades. And the way I structure your syllabus to make later assignments worth more than earlier ones, if it takes a little bit more time for it to gel. So I've tried everything I can to make these exercises and assignments in my courses in a way where it's not as anxiety producing. I don't want to create anxiety. And one of the reasons why is anxiety is not only very unpleasant, it's counterproductive. The higher faculties are not your fight or flight basal senses, at your brainstem. Anxiety is counterproductive. You can't really think in higher ways, in critical ways, if you're just afraid, if you're having a physical response. So I've done everything I can to make it where you don't have to do your best on a paper, turn it in, and just hope it was right. Because also, how do you learn that way? If you did get everything wrong, well, it's too late now for me to teach you what went wrong and how to get it right. So I've done everything I can to try to make it where you don't need to be anxious. Um, and so don't be anxious. There's a lot of things that look scary, that look real. A lot of very difficult concepts and things that you've got to get, but it can't hurt you. It's meant to teach you how to avoid being hurt. So I'm not going to lie to you. This class, any class I teach, some are easier than others, but they're pretty much going to be a struggle. They're going to be painful. You're going to, be frustrated with not understanding something that's an entirely new way of thinking, or, it's going to be hard. Not only is it hard because you're exhausted, because the work, associated with being in grad school is so much. It's going to be painful if you try really, really hard and you just miss the mark on it. That's incredibly discouraging. So I'm not saying that you can anticipate this to be a pain-free experience. I do my best to not cause extra pain, but it's kind of par for the course when it comes to grad school. Grad school is inherently hard. Even if I try my best to make it easier, there's no way for it not to be hard. But if there was a way to teach you what you need to know without it being hard, I'd like to think I would have found it. You kind of have to embrace the fact that it's going to be difficult. It might be a struggle, but that's how you learn to fly. So, more on simulation. In order for our classroom laboratory to be the most effective in preparing you for your career, it's got to be as similar to the real world as possible. We do, because it's not real, I do have all sorts of abilities to extend grace. Because it's not real. If you make a mistake in human resource management, it's not going to actually cost somebody their job. It's not going to get you sued. It's not going to get your organization, dragged into some sort of big public relations scandal, because it's not real. So we do have some wiggle room. I have deadlines and things that are imposed on me that, I can't give you grace if I don't have it myself. So, some things are outside of my control. Other things, we do have some flexibility. But the real world, the marketplace out there, your career is not going to have a whole lot of flexibility. They require you to do something. They require you to do it by a certain time. So I'm going to try to make this as close to what you would see in your career as possible, because the knowledge and skills and abilities that you gain with an MBA, they're necessary. Yeah, that you have to have these knowledge, skills, and abilities in order to do the job. They are necessary, but they are not a sufficient condition for a successful career in public sector. You can have somebody that's really knowledgeable, really skilled, has all sorts of abilities, but just cannot succeed as a public leader because they have not had the professional development. How we interact with each other as a class, how you interact with your colleagues, how you interact with me, this has potential to determine how far you go in your career, as much or more necessarily than your grades do, in my opinion. And I don't want to miss an opportunity to expose things that are different between perhaps generations. Maybe you're younger or you're older and there's a communication barrier. These are important things. How we interact matters. It determines how far we go. And how you juggle your workload, how you face a challenge, how you react to criticism, how you find solutions for problems, how you get over your disappointments, how you handle conflict, how you address ethical dilemmas. All of these things set you up for either an advantage or a disadvantage in the field. And if I see an opportunity to set you up for an advantage, I'm going to. And if I see some place where you may be at a disadvantage, I'm going to let you know that as well. And that's because it's best for that to happen here, where this is my job to prepare you for your career, because I don't think that it's going to happen out in the field. If you do or say something that causes someone to have a poor impression of your competence, then they're not necessarily going to tell you that. If you misspell your own name, and I have actually had grad students misspell their own names, for real, seriously. If you do things like that, it makes you look like you're careless, that you're not paying attention. There's things that matter more than you might think it matters. And so I'm going to take that opportunity to develop you as a leader and as a professional by giving you an honest assessment of what I think your strengths are and where I think that you can improve. And every opportunity is not just to teach you these knowledge, skills, and abilities, but also to teach you all of the different political and cultural nuances that you might see when you get out in different areas of the public sector. So, standards. I don't create them, y'all. I just uphold them. I don't decide what the standard is. They are anything but arbitrary, which is why I love them so much. I love the fact that an A is a 90. I don't round up, because if an 89.9 was an A, then that wouldn't be a standard. It would be 89.9, not 90. Standards are anything but arbitrary. They exist to be objective measures, not subjective measures. I do not create them. I don't decide what the standard is. I'd like to think that I have higher expectations of myself, but the standards of what competencies you should have are set by the accreditation bodies, are set by the field in general. And I do my best to make sure that I objectively measure where you are in relation to those standards. Because an MPA suggests skills needed for success, laxity does you no favors. If I suggested that you meet a standard and you don't, I have done you an extreme disservice. So when you're saying to me, this is very common, oh, I just want to give you what you want. It's not what I want. It's not my preference. It's not that, I'm some kind of crazy control freak and I just want everything, I want nothing but green M&Ms, or, like some sort of diva. That's not it at all. It's because these are things that are going to be expected of you in the field. So I just uphold them. I don't decide what plagiarism is. I didn't decide what percentage has to be original before it needs to have a co-author credited. I didn't decide these things, but I uphold them because they are how we have footing. If, everything's, relative and subjective, then, how does anyone know anything? So standards, I let you know what they are and I apply them. And I apply them without any sort of prejudice whatsoever, because that's the best thing I could do for you. Cutting you slack actually doesn't help you. This is what helps you, is holding you to these standards that assure that when you get out of this program, you know what you're doing. So, strategies. What are my strategies for helping you meet those standards? One of them is coaching. Basically telling you to figure things out, oh, you're wrong. Go back and figure out why you're wrong. That doesn't help, I don't think. The way I design things in most of my classes is cumulative, where we take it piece by piece and, fun little bite-sized chunks, and we work through where maybe you're not quite understanding, why we do things a certain way. Why is it necessary to, have a lit review to establish a theory? Why can't you just use your own theory of why something is? So coaching is my way of making sure that you stay on track and you learn it and that you don't feel like you're on your own. So I'm here to steer you in the right direction and you see it through. Assessment. Another strategy that I use is I accurately tell you where you are, even when there's no reason to believe that you're anywhere close. At the beginning of a class, when you're totally new to this concept, your assessment is not going to, of your competency is not going to be high because you haven't had a chance. It doesn't say anything bad about you, but you need to know where you are in order to know how far you are away from where you need to go. And it needs to be accurate and it needs to be as clear as possible. And so by assessing you along the way, by telling you, if this paper were turned in today, this is what grade you would get. Here's where you can correct it in order to get a better grade. That's my way of making sure you know where something needs to be corrected, where there's room for improvement, but also making sure that when you do finish, you know what you're doing. Another thing is relevance. Now, one of my strategies is that I try to make any assignment that you do as relevant to the field, the program, your interests as possible. There's some classes that don't really lend themselves to teaching you a skill. I try to, if I can, make sure that you leave my class with a resume bullet that sets you apart from other people in your organization and other candidates. So even if you don't finish the MPA, maybe you get promoted and move on to something else and you don't feel like you need it anymore, you have bigger fish to fry, you are still better off for having taken my class. So I try to make everything as relevant as possible. When I have a class that doesn't lend itself to a skill, I try to impart a skill that I think would help you in another class. And that's what I do in org behavior. I cover all the material that you need to be confident in the quizzes and the exams. But the paper that you write, because a paper is required, is designed to teach you the formula that you can use to write papers in just about any other class. So the goal is to set you up for your applied research project. So anything that I can think of that can help you in another way that's relevant to your interest, I'm going to do that. And then finally, redemption. I try to make it where there's never enough mistakes a person can make in my class. Never enough honest mistakes or struggles that a person can have where they have reason to give up. I make it where there's always a chance to make up those points later, and there's reason to stick it out because you're not going to achieve my aims and my goals for you if you drop the class. There's likelihood that you might struggle earlier in the semester, but that's one reason why papers are cumulative and worth so much. By the time you turn it in, 25% of your grade you can know is probably going to be an A. And that's why grades in my classes are so high. So I do everything I can to control to stack the deck in your favor, basically, where you always have a chance to succeed. The only way that you can really put yourself in a position where it's beyond redemption is by not doing the work, not putting in the effort, missing an exam, something like that. So this is basically how I go about trying to achieve my goals. And a lot of this is based on, I'm your coach, you got to have some faith in me. Some of you know me, some of you don't know me. And I ask you to trust me, not blindly trust me. Ask me, okay, why are we doing it this way and why are we doing it that way? When I say I want you to trust me, I want you to trust that I respect your time, that I respect your intelligence, that I am willing to work hard for you and put in twice as much effort as you do. And I need you to believe that when I assess you in a certain way, when I say, okay, this is not going to work or that's not going to work, that I'm doing it for your own good and that you will be better off for it later as much as you curse my name at the time. So I want to develop this trust and this partnership with you where you can believe that no matter what happens, if I make a big bonehead mistake, which I have before, that I'm going to go back and curve the grades to compensate for that, that you can trust that I am never going to hurt you and I'm always going to help you. So communication. Basically, I make the assignments what is due and what is covered very clear via lectures. I give you templates, I give you guidelines. So I make the instructions very clear and the material that you're supposed to cover is made evident to you. Once that instruction is offered, you apply it, and it can be hit or miss. You do your best, and sometimes people just miss the mark, and sometimes they hit the nail right on the head. Expect that you might struggle, and it might take some patience with yourself to allow it to come together. Sometimes the first couple drafts of a paper just don't work. You're going too broad or you're going too narrow, and we have to fine tune it. Once I've told you what you need to do and you know what the standards are, I expect you to apply them. Good faith efforts, meaning that you viewed the lecture, you presented a complete product, you did your due diligence to make sure that it was cited properly, you checked your APA manual, you spell checked, grammar checked. I can tell that you really gave it your best shot on this. If you put in the good faith effort to create an acceptable product, but that product does not fulfill the purpose because you just missed the mark somehow. If I can see that you've put in a good faith effort, there's nothing to fear. There's just the chance to clarify and correct, and that's what learning is. So I don't want you to be afraid to make mistakes, but I want you to know that it's important that you put in the effort on your own, because coaching is not hand-holding and it's not criticizing. So it's not telling you precisely what to do, and it's not telling you all the things you did wrong. What it is I point out principles. When I'm going through your papers and I'm grading papers, and for research methods, for example, a principle that sometimes students get wrong is thinking that the null hypothesis is the opposite of the alternate hypothesis, when the null hypothesis is no relationship. When I've pointed out that principle, I expect them to apply it thereafter. So if I pointed out that we don't use first person in APA, and I point it out in one place, I'm not going to point it out every incidence of it, because if it's wrong in one place, it's wrong everywhere else. So I'm not your proofreader, I'm not your editor, I'm your professor. So I'm going to point out something that needs your attention, and I expect you to learn and apply it and move on ever since. So it's on you to do your part, but it's on me to let you know what needs to be done. So I don't expect you to know what you don't know, but I expect you to learn it. And the way I teach it to you is step by step. Now, compensation. Credit is the just compensation for academic work. Journal articles that we publish, we don't get paid for that. For professors, we get paid to do research, which is great, but we don't get royalties for that sort of thing. We get credit. We get credit for our findings, our research, our inventions, our publications, and credit is the compensation you get for your academic work as well. You get the acknowledgement that you have a degree and you can use that degree for more money. You can use it for more opportunities. Credit also communicates to students where you are in reference to where you need to be. So this is why it's important that grades be accurate. When I assign points and credit for something, that it's an accurate assessment of where you are. Now, here's the problem with this. If I cut you slack to give you credit because I don't want to unjustly penalize you for not getting something that I don't expect you to get quite yet, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take away the compensation that you've earned, but I also can't give it to you until you've shown me that you know the content and therefore are safe to move on and get these letters after your name. So it's kind of hard, it kind of puts me in a rough spot. And so what I do is, if a grade can't be accurate without being unfairly punitive. So if you just miss the mark somewhere, and if it's not there, I can't give you points for it, but I don't want to give you a very, very low grade, I will give you a placeholder grade, which is an 80. And then I will go back and grade that paper later after you've had chance for me to help you get right back on track. So I do everything I can to not harm your grade because you aren't quite there where you need to be. But also sometimes, to communicate unacceptable work, grades must be punitive. Sometimes I have to make it clear that it's not acceptable to not do your due diligence to check the manual. It's not acceptable to turn in something completely sloppy that's full of spelling errors when you could have ran it through Grammarly. I will give an FYI where I say, okay, FYI, this principle, numbers in APA, are they spelled out? Things like that. And if you don't fix it, it graduates into a penalty. So if I see it again, it becomes a penalty. If I see it a second time, it becomes double the penalty. And then outright rejection. And that is where the paper is completely unacceptable in that it's not sufficiently original. It doesn't use the template. It doesn't cover the material that it's supposed to cover. This is almost always a lack of effort, not a lack of ability. If you were in this program, you have the ability. So when it comes to grades, I can't risk communicating with you that everything is okay when it's not okay. And if I cut you slack on grades, you're thinking, oh, I'm doing fine. I got a good grade on that. But maybe you're not. Maybe you're not doing fine. Maybe it's incorrect. And so that's why I use placeholder grades. And if I need to get it across to you that what you turned in is not acceptable, I have to give you a 1. I give you a 1 instead of a 0 because I want it to be clear that it was graded, not that it just hasn't been graded yet. The deal here is that if you put in the effort, I can assure you that you will end up with a credit in the end. If you don't put it in the effort, I can assure you that you won't. And I know the effort is critical to you getting this. I don't care how talented or smart you are. It's work. Because I know effort is the key to you succeeding, I cannot reward a lack of due diligence. There's, it's one thing to make a mistake, right? Just like, oh, you don't know any better, you're learning. It's another thing to just not do what you're supposed to do. And I can't give credit for you not doing what you're supposed to do. If I ask you to, an assignment says, look up a press release and give an analysis, and you give me a journal article or a blog post, that is not the product that you're supposed to give me. That's not something that in the marketplace you would be paid for. You wouldn't be paid for that because that's not what they ordered. And also, you don't get credit for doing something halfway. And the analogy I use is I hire you to dig a pool in my backyard, and you dig a big old hole, but you don't finish. That's not how it works. You don't get compensated for that. If you don't finish, you get, sued, or, you know, fired, or put in jail sometimes. So that's what I try to communicate when I don't accept certain things. And I also don't reward negligence, because out there in your career, you're not given a second chance to do something that you didn't do the first time. If you mess it up and you want to try again, sure. But if you just flat out, leave your post, don't do your job, don't finish, and say, oh, wait a second, can I go back? That's not going to happen. And so credit indicates competence, not effort. There is no such thing as, social promotion when it comes to an MPA. You can't get an MPA just because you tried really, really hard. To get an MPA, you have to show that you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities that it implies. So I can't give you credit for your effort. I can give you the opportunity to get credit because of your effort, but I cannot give you credit until you actually master the material and the product. But effort is required to get you there. So as long as you do your due diligence and put in your effort, I do not see anything for you to worry about. So in the end, to be competent and career ready, what I do is I ensure that students exit each course with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to call yourself an MPA. I promote leadership development, and I try to apply real-world scenarios. And I allow a certain degree of damage control to teach lessons about how to avoid major blunders in the field. And, example of that is if someone turns in a final paper and it's not the final paper that they were supposed to turn in. If that were a grant proposal and they'd spent weeks and weeks and weeks and man hours and money and resources to write it, and they missed the deadline because they attached another document, that would have been catastrophic. And I actually had a student do this, turn in the wrong document, and I gave it a 0. I give it a 1 because, this is not the product. I didn't reach out and say, hey, by the way, like, I'm a kindergarten teacher. Do you want to turn in the right one? Because it would have missed the opportunity for them to see, hey, wait, this could be a big problem, because this is a simulator and it's not real life, and this is a safe place to land. Of course, I took the real paper, but allowing nature to run its course is a chance to teach a lesson about how important these things are. And then refusing to enable or ignore behavior that I consider to be counterproductive, that would inhibit your success. Unprofessionalism, for example, not handling conflict appropriately, barking orders and demands, and throwing a fit when you don't understand why you got a particular grade instead of inquiring about it, that sort of thing. The combination of these things together is kind of my fail-safe recipe to equip you for a successful career in public leadership. So if I give you the knowledge, skills, and abilities, but I don't lose out on the opportunity to promote leadership skills and address issues that might put you at a disadvantage, those things together, I think, put you at the best possible position to succeed in your career. At least that's what I hope. So my ultimate objective is, of course, I want you to master the content toward your MPA. And I want you to demonstrate that with grade points. I want everybody to do well. But I also want you to be better equipped to excel in other courses. I want what you learn in one of my classes to help you in another class, and to just accumulate naturally the ability to do better in the program. And I want you to exit not only the program, but each course you take more competent and marketable than you started it. And what I mean by that is I made sure with my educational past that I didn't bank on finishing. I didn't get any degree that was only useful if I finished it. I got, or only useful if I got additional degrees. So I didn't get a degree that, oh, well, you really have to have a PhD in that for it to matter, or you have to have a master's in it to matter. I got a terminal degree at each point. And I also took classes that if I had to quit that program, if I had a family member that got sick, or I got a good opportunity or whatever, I would still be better off than I was before. So that's my goal. I don't know how long I have you. My goal is for all of you to graduate with an MBA, obviously. But if you get some sort of huge promotion or something happens, I still want you to be better off for having been in my course. I want you to have something that sets you apart. I want you to have a resume bullet, if I can get that to you, to say, hey, I know SPSS, and I know how to do hierarchy charts, and I know how to do needs assessments. That's what I want. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I want you better off in some way than you would have been if you'd never taken my course. If you never use something I teach you, like the material's just not at all relevant to where you end up in life. I'd like to think that you made some relationships with your colleagues. Like to think that you got a couple laughs out of the whole thing, because I say funny things that are funny. Like to think that you learned something about yourself. I just want to make you better off in some way than you otherwise would have been. I have lofty goals, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to make your life better in some way. So that is what I aim to do. And everything I do in each of my classes is aimed toward that goal. And the way I set up my assignments, the way I set up pretty much everything I do is designed around this basic strategy. So I hope that that helps. I hope that that explains a little bit more what you're getting into. I hope that it inspires you to know that, hey, stick it out. Not doing well in the beginning, struggling in the beginning of something, I've already kind of accounted for that. And I've designed it where there's a chance for you to make things up at the end. And that you don't have to figure out what it is I want. You just have to figure out what the standard is, which I communicate to you in order to succeed. So, and I hope you know that I care about you and I want to do right by you. And I would never deny you credit or points you were earned, and that you can come to me if there's something you need, there's something I'm not doing well. And I want you to know that you can trust me to always have your best interest at heart. So welcome to my class, and I hope you have a wonderful semester.